Okay, so live on Instagram again. This is the second time I've come here to have a chat about personal power. So just going to give people a few minutes to see if they can log on, get notification that we've gone live. So bear with me. And then we will have a chat about power. I quite like calling these power chats because that's kind of what they are. It's a very succinct way of saying what they are. But personal power is a subject which I'm very, very passionate about. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start the conversation about this. So I'm doing some live Instagrams and also some Zoom calls. So we've had a few already, and this is just one in a series of these chats. So, okay, let's just see. Okay, so I'll begin, and then if people want to join, they can do. So, why am I talking about personal power? Well, it's not something that we tend to talk about, personal power. And I think it's because power has got a kind of a dirty reputation, if I may be so bold as to call it that. Power has got a really bad reputation. And I think the reason why it's got a bad reputation is because what we tend to call power in society is not really power. It's not at all power. But we call it power, and the power that we tend to talk about is usually quite corruptible, and it is usually manipulative, underhand. And so it's not something we think we want for ourselves. And that's just because we got the definition wrong. So when we actually understand what true power is and what it actually would mean for us in our lives, then it starts to seem attractive. But as we talk about power in society, it doesn't seem like something that we want. And therefore, we never really truly step into our true power because we're kind of afraid of it. So let's talk a bit about what power is and what it isn't. And I think the first stopping point is to talk about what society calls power, which isn't true power. And what we tend to sort of talk about power is in terms of political power, financial power, and organisational power. And so what happens is that we're talking about power, but we really mean the correct word is authority. We've given someone authority because of what they are, in theory, providing us. So authority is the power or right to give orders, make decisions, and enforcing obedience. That's the definition of authority. And usually we have given that authority to someone through voting or through their providing a service, and we give them money and they accumulate it. So we tend to give that authority to somebody because of something they are in theory giving us in service. But this, what we call power, is actually authority, and it's not really based on any ethical or moral principles at all, right? It is a service they're providing, and they can have any kind of morals. We haven't stopped to check them. Whereas true power is actually spiritual. It's part of our essence state. It's part of our divine right. And true power is very, very different to what we call power in society. It's not ego-based. It's not mind-based. If something is ego-based, it's very much open to being abused corrupted, and that kind of thing. Why? Because the ego mind is very corruptible. It wants what it thinks is power, and it doesn't believe it has the ability to do that within itself, so it tries to get it from others, right? So by trying to get something from others, it's trying to take something from others. So there's always going to be this inequality when authority and an ego mind thinks about power. And spiritual power, true power, is not like that at all. True power is actually a spiritual state. It is based in love, peace and joy. And this is not open to abuse, you'll be pleased to know, because it's not egoic. So when we talk about spiritual power, when we talk about power, we're actually talking about a very high consciousness state of being. And this higher consciousness has no interest in corrupting. It has no interest in manipulating. There's no force. There's no pushing. There's no coercion. And so it is something that we can want for ourselves. It is something that we can cultivate within ourselves. And so kind of why would we want to? Why would we want to activate this true nature of power? And it's simply because when you live out of love, peace and joy, which are three most powerful states that we have as human beings, it means that we become kind of invincible, because the world doesn't have our emotions. It can't manipulate our feelings. It can't upset us or make us angry. It can't corrupt us. we become invincible. I was actually thinking of calling the course Becoming Invincible, the 7 steps to personal power and freedom. And maybe if I rerun it, I will actually call it that, because I think it's a good description. And that is, you know, regardless of what is happening in the external circumstances, we can then walk our path honestly, truthfully, in alignment with ourselves, powerfully, lovingly, peacefully, kindly and joyfully, right? Now that's what true power is. And so the idea that power is something that we actually can and should want for ourselves, right? It sounds great, right? Living our lives as we would want it to be, fulfilling our purpose and acting out of love, peace and joy, no matter what, right? So I give some examples usually of in recent history who are the best examples that we have of people who were in their true power, and you can probably guess them. The 3 that I usually name are the Dalai Lama, Nelson Mandela and Gandhi. There are others, so don't be upset. There are others, but those are my 3 examples that I usually hold up. And so why do I hold these 3 up? Well, we know obviously that their part in history has been very influential. Gandhi and Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, they all precede each other, if you like, in terms of influencing peaceful resistance. But I have some stories that I like to tell, because I think they give some pretty good examples of what I mean by true power. So went to see the Dalai Lama talk many years ago when he came to the UK, and he was giving talks over a weekend, and outside there were protesters who were pro-China, and they were saying terrible things about the Dalai Lama. Now, obviously, most people who were going into the venue were pro the Dalai Lama, and so a question came up that was asked, like, how do you feel, to the Dalai Lama, how do you feel about the protesters outside? And I guess with an expectation that the Dalai Lama would say something to defend himself, or, you know, whatever, to talk about the situation in Tibet. And he just laughed. He just giggled. And he just said, I think it's great that these people have something they want to express, and they're living in a country where they're able to express it. And that was the end of that answer. You know, the people in the audience, you know, wanted to run to his defense, and they even wanted to talk about the politics and, you know, whatever. But he himself was like, yeah, it's fine. I have no problem with it. Because he understood the truth. So for him, he didn't need to get into any kind of power debate or political debate or struggle. And Nelson Mandela, a great story about Nelson Mandela, although there are many, was that one day when he was president of South Africa, he was out to dinner with his team, and a man was waiting to be seated for a table, and Nelson Mandela called him over and invited him to join the group for dinner. The man joined, but he was acting very strangely. He was shaking, looking down. He ate his dinner and then he left very quietly, still shaking and still acting very unusually. And then when he left, Nelson Mandela's friends and team, people he worked with, said, "Who was that man that you invited to dinner?" And he said, "Well, that's the guard who used to torture me when I was in prison." And that's the great, really good example of what true power is. There wasn't a need for a big scene. There's no drama. There's no retribution. There's no anger. Nelson Mandela was able to, he had made a commitment to love, peace and joy, and he did not need anything. His ego did not need anything from that man, and therefore he was able to offer him to come join him for dinner. And that is true power to me. That's a great example of true power. So, you know, we often talk about power so incorrectly in society, but that's what true power really is being able to live truthfully in your power, in alignment with who you are and what you're here to do, and not to be shaken off that path by untruths or egoic concepts and belief systems and feeling that you have to take something in order to get something. So it's a really, really powerful state, true power. And it's not often understood. It's not often understood either by people who are trying to change society, and that's a shame. And we'll talk about that on the last week of the course. So I should say I'm running an 8-week course on the 7 steps to personal power. And on the 7th week, we will be talking about this in great more detail for those who wish to kind of feel like they want to change the world. They believe in systemic change. Well, if you don't understand the true nature of power, that's going to be a very it's going to be a very long, hard road. So it is really important to understand this, and a lot of activism doesn't really understand this either, and that's why a lot of them don't succeed even though they're a really good cause. So it is an important topic. First, we deal with personal power. When we understand this, then we are ready and able to then lead from that place of personal power to create change. So what's worth mentioning as well is that in the Western world especially, we tend to not really acknowledge power within ourselves and within our lives. And part of the reason for that is because we don't actually acknowledge the most powerful part of ourselves. So we are a mind, body, spirit. We are a 3-part system. So we've got 3 parts: mind, body and spirit. And body is highly intelligent, but it's not very powerful. It's highly intelligent. As a healer, I know this. The body is highly intelligent. It knows what it needs to do to heal. You don't have to give it any instructions. It knows exactly. But it doesn't have any power. It couldn't create that illness. It doesn't have the power to create. It is just the arena, if you like, where things show up. Because the body is here to experience stuff. It's not here to create anything. So the body is intelligent, but it's not very powerful, energetically speaking. The mind is more powerful than the body, so the body takes the cues from the mind. And the body, so we often blame the body when we're ill, and we say, body, why aren't you doing what you're doing? And we berate the body, and it's not its fault. The culprit is the mind. Then it shows up in the body. So the mind is more powerful than the body. And we know this. We know how powerful our minds are. And it's really a tool. The mind is really a tool. It was given to us to help us do things in the world. It's there to protect us. It's got two main objectives in life, is to protect us from danger and to help us do things in the world. So it's more powerful than the body. And then our spirit is more powerful than our mind. Why is it more powerful? Well, this is where love comes from. This is where life force energy comes from. This is where creativity comes from. It's from inspiration. All the ideas that you have, you think you create them out of your mind, but you didn't. They came in, and then the mind did something with it and then puts it out into the world using the body. So that's the correct running order. Spirit, mind, and then body. And unfortunately, in the Western world, we are massive spirit deniers. We deny we have it, and we put the mind at the top of our hierarchy and says the mind is the most important and most powerful. We give it that power, and then we wonder why we are miserable. We are miserable because we've given all the power in our lives to our mind. It's quite a simple equation. So we have to stop giving all this power to the mind. It runs rampant. It runs amok when unchecked. It was never meant to have all this power. It's a tool that we were given to help us have an interesting and great life. It's not meant to be the master controller. It is meant to be a tool. So if we're going to understand the true nature of power, we have to understand that this true power comes from our spirit side. It comes from love side. It comes from peace. It comes from joy. These are our essence states. These are our spiritual states. And everybody has them. So therefore we all have access to it. So this is an important sort of foundation piece to understand. So why am I talking about personal power now? Why am I doing all these live events and running this course? So one reason is that it's come up as a really big theme for 2021. 2020 had this really interesting theme, which was about the ability to hold two conflicting kind of ideas at the same time. And that made most people feel massively uncomfortable. As all great learnings do. And it was really about being able to hold discomfort and be okay with it. And that was a really big thing for last year. This year, the theme really very, very strongly is about personal power. And we are now living in a world with a lot of fear. A lot of people telling you shouldn't be fearful along one narrative and then scaring you with a different narrative, which I find really, really annoying. That they say, don't give in to fear. And there's a lot of people in the spiritual community say, don't get into fear. If you give in to fear, you're a terrible human being and you mustn't give in to fear. And then they give you a different narrative, which is fearful. That makes you scared. You're even scared that you might be a bad person if you do something, or you're a bad person if you don't do something. That is still fear mongering, just for the record, everyone. And it's not fair, right? So we're in a world where there is a lot of fear, and there's a lot of people telling you how to feel about something, and that is literally not what personal power is about. There's a lot of information, there's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of opinion that is masquerading as spiritual truth, another point that annoys me greatly. And there's a massive overload of information. There's tremendous inequality that has been showing itself through the pandemic. There's a lot of drama, there's a lot of people with conflicting opinions, and it's a bit overwhelming. Okay, so in all of that, amongst all of that, if you can stand within your personal power, if you can go back to yourself without having to rely on other people to tell you how to feel, act or be, then you're in your personal power. Now, that doesn't mean that you are bloody minded and you don't listen to anyone or anything, but it's about going back to your intuition. It's about going back to your source. It's going back to truth, wisdom, and being able to trust yourself with what you believe to be right. So it's a really important time in history where we are being asked to consider our personal power, especially because there are many people who feel that we are living in a world that requires change, urgent change, but we can't change anything if we don't understand this. This is really, really essential that we understand it before change gets created, because otherwise it will be short-lived. So that's the reason why I'm running this course when I am. I am very passionate about it. And, you know, although we may not have talked about why do I want personal power in your life, when you see what these 7 steps are, and I'm about to go through these 7 steps, you will see why the 7 steps are important. And it may well be things that you may be interested in developing in yourself, but you wouldn't necessarily have attributed that to wanting more personal power. But that is the result that you will get if you practice these things, right? So I've identified 7 steps to personal power. Now, there are some nuances within these 7 steps. So that's why when I'm doing 7 steps to personal power, we're doing an 8-week course, just so that we can celebrate, obviously, the things that we have practiced and have gone well, and we've mastered a bit more. But it's also there, the 8th week, to see where there may be some nuances that we didn't cover in great detail, but people have found that through the practice, something has been a bit more difficult to master, and that way we can go through those nuances as well and answer questions and troubleshoot for everybody. So, what are the 7 steps? So, the first one is to learn how to consistently raise and maintain your vibration to facilitate everything you want in life. Now, people ask me all the time, how do I raise my vibration? It's one of the most commonly asked questions I get. I just want to know how to raise my vibration. I just need to raise my vibration. And it's true. It's good to know how to raise your vibration on command. But we do it all the time unconsciously. We know actually how to raise our vibration. The raising of vibration is the easy part. It really genuinely is. It's so easy. You do it all the time. Anytime you're happy, anytime you laugh, anytime you sing along to some music on the radio or have a little dance, anytime you sit in nature and just enjoy yourself, anytime you meditate, anytime you do yoga, there are millions of ways you raise your vibration. The raising of your vibration is not the issue. And the reason why I'm being very, very, I'm labouring the point is about being consistent in that vibration and maintaining that vibration no matter what. That is the commitment, and that is the difficulty that people struggle with. It's all very well when you're sitting in nature and the trees are rustling and the sun is shining and you're sitting there and you're, oh, it's so beautiful. Yeah, it's quite easy to have your vibration high there. But what happens when you go into work and a colleague says something and it upsets you, then you have to have your vibration be high. You know, or you know, it could be anything. It could be, you know, you have difficulty with family members, or you see something on the news and it upsets you, or somebody has an argument about something you care deeply about. It's not about having a high vibration when it's easy. It's about having a high vibration when it's not easy. So that's step 1, is really about learning how to maintain that vibration. So what do we mean by high vibration? When we are in love, peace and joy. Okay, so the reason I always mention love, peace and joy is I'm a big fan of Dr. David R. Hawkins, and he makes it, he kind of lays it out in the most clear way that I've ever seen. These are the highest levels of consciousness, love, peace and joy. How do we know that? Well, all spiritual teachers, what do we know about them? They're peaceful. That's the highest vibration we have. What we tend to call someone who's enlightened is that they're deeply peaceful. They're not really concerned by the details of life. Because they know them to be false, so they don't get involved in them. So peace, joy and love, those are our 3 highest vibrations. So staying in those vibrations, no matter what happens, is a commitment that we have to make and maintain and constantly go back to until it becomes habitual. And it does tend to become habitual. There are sort of bumps in the road, but once you started to commit and once you go back and once you go through these steps, they're all kind of entwined. I've put them out into steps because when you're developing these skills, that one naturally follows the other, but they're actually all entwined. So raise and maintain your vibration. And number 2 is mastering your thoughts and understanding the power of choice. Well, this is such a big topic as in itself, but in its fundamental part, it's the recognition that your mind is not the most powerful part of you, your spirit is, that you wish to be directed by spirit, not by your mind, and your mind is your faithful servant. It's there to help you. So while your mind thinks it's the master of you, you are at its mercy. There's a power dynamic between you and your mind, right? You are a slave to what your mind tells you, right? But when you step out of that power dynamic and say, actually, mind, you're not the most powerful part of me. I've got spirit here and I'm listening to spirit, not mind. The mind then stops being the master of you and you can retrain it. It is possible. Trust me on this, I've done it myself. You can retrain it. You can retrain your mind to put it back into its correct positioning. Then it can become your ally and it can become your friend. And it doesn't interfere with the things that you want in life. So most people, what happens is that you have a subconscious mind and you have a conscious mind. Your conscious mind is what you want to do in life. Your subconscious mind is all your programming that you've picked up from society, family, friends, all your life experiences, especially from 0 to 7. And that's your programming. And your conscious mind, you probably heard the figures, is like your subconscious mind runs 93% of the time, conscious mind 7%. So guess which one usually wins out? Your programming wins out. So you consciously want something, but you can't get it. You're not having, it's not coming into your life. It's because your subconscious mind is running the show. So all the things that you really want for yourself need to come into alignment. And that means redoing the programming, changing the programming, reassessing some of those beliefs, changing those beliefs so they come in line with who you are as an adult, not these beliefs you've picked up from people and TV and films and whatever. You decide what you believe, what you want, and the mind gets retrained to come into alignment with that. So that's a really important part of the process. And with that comes the understanding of the power of choice. Now I could talk about this for ages, but I'm not. I'm just going to top line this just to say that the power of choice is really important and it gets lost a lot in society. And the reason it gets lost is because we love as humans to say, yeah, but I had no choice. Oh, but I've got no choice in this. And that's a lie. There's always a choice. You might not like your choices. You may not like them, but you will always have them. And because we've got very dualistic minds, we tend to only see 2 choices. They're quite polar, and they're usually polar opposites. So we think in our minds that we've only got 2 options when actually we've got infinite possibilities. So really understanding the power of choice and the power that it has when you make a choice is really important. So we'll be doing a lot on that on week 2. So step 3 on the road to personal power is knowing your worth, loving acceptance and non-judgment. I don't know how I'm going to fit this all into this course. There's so much to teach. But in its basic understanding, your self-worth is your foundation stone. If your self-worth is not intact, you are going to be struggling with manifestation, with health, with success, with all the things that most people want in life. It's going to be a struggle, because part of self-worth is also the understanding that you are worthy to receive what it is that you are trying to create. So it is a foundation stone. There is a really easy way to reset your self-worth, which we will be doing on the course. This is my process. Doesn't come from anywhere else. It's very, very quick when it works, and it's very, very simple. And once you know how to do it, you can apply it to lots of other areas that may come up that you can actually adapt it to. So we'll be doing restoring self-worth to its pristine state, which is how it should be if the mind hadn't interfered. Always the mind. So knowing your worth, loving acceptance, and non-judgment. So these are actually practices. It's not just a term, acceptance. It's not just a term, non-judgment. These are practices. You have to practice it. And they're really, really, truly important. Judgment is literally a killer of all joy. Joy is one of our highest vibrations. And you will kill all your joy in your life with judgment. You know, I actually say, and I have been known to say, you know, we're addicted to judgment. And that addiction to judgment is actually an addiction to suffering. Because if you actually look at most of suffering, there'll be a judgment at its core. So non-judgment is a really important practice. Starts with us not judging ourselves. And when we don't judge ourselves, we have no interest in judging others. So that's really important. If you want a peaceful life, non-judgment is the doorway to peace. Peace is the highest vibration we have. You see how it's all entwined. And acceptance, this is one of my favorite things that I say. Acceptance is the doorway to all the good stuff in life. And why is that the case? Well, if we deny or resist something, then we can't change it. So acceptance always comes before a change. It sounds counterintuitive. A lot of people resist accepting it, because they give it some meaning that if we accept something, it means something, or we've validated it, or we've colluded with it, or we've dismissed it. And that's just not true. And this is it sounds counterintuitive, but it's not in the slightest. Acceptance really is the doorway to all the good stuff in life. So practicing this is really, really important. Next in the steps is self-love, the power of self-love, and how important it is for health as well. Because you need to have health if you're going to be personally powerful as well. You need to be able to be in control of your life, and that includes your body too. So self-love is really the foundation of health. And if you've read my book, Why We Get Ill and Stay Ill, this will not be new to you either. Self-love is so important, and it gets missed so much because, again, people don't understand the power of love. Now, people incorrectly, when they see somebody negative or acting negatively, they say, wow, and they seem to be influential. They say, wow, that person's really powerful. And that is a power dynamic they create, because that's an untruth. The person who is negative is not more powerful than the person who is loving. The person who is loving, by its very nature of energy fields and power, is more powerful than the one who is acting negatively. But we don't believe it. So we believe the untruth and we don't believe the truth. So then we never step into that truth. And so, I could talk about this all day. Self-love is really important, because self-love, you can't give what you don't have yourself. Self-love is really important because it's a foundation stone as well. And self-love isn't the same as just like having hot baths and having nice baths and things like that. It's actually about respecting oneself, caring about oneself. in a way that has boundaries as well, that some people don't really understand. And hello. And so self-love is a really, really important core part of personal power. And then we talk about manifestation. So why is it so late in the course? The reason it's so late in the course is because without self-worth, without vibration, without self-love, manifestation becomes almost impossible. Because these are the foundation stones that make everything else easier to manifest. A lot of people try to manifest things just using their minds, and you can't manifest just using your mind. Your mind is powerful, but it doesn't have the power of creation, which is where the energy field is that you're pulling things from. the field of all possibilities, the quantum field. The mind doesn't have jurisdiction over that. So you have to go to the energy, you have to go to the vibration, and where does that come from? That comes from emotion and feeling. That's how we access it. So love, peace and joy, yet again. So if you want to manifest something in your life, you master these other steps, it just makes it easier. So you've mastered your vibration in step 1. You've mastered your self-worth, so you feel worthy to receive whatever it is that you want for yourself. You have self-love as well. Again, a key part of vibration is love. So we're mastering all of these things. And then why are we mastering our mind as well? Because we want our mind to not interfere with that which we're trying to create. So when I was talking earlier about having the mind be a tool, you want it to be your friend, your ally in your life, not your enemy. You have to retrain it. Right? So if you're trying to manifest something, so we talked about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. If you want something with your conscious mind and your subconscious mind is your enemy, it's going to run counter to what you actually want. So that's why we retrain the mind to be an ally to what you want to create. So that's why manifestation isn't right at the front of the course. It's midway. And part of that as well is trusting your intuition. What is it that's truly in alignment with what you want? What are you resonating with is what is meant for you. So we then talk, so manifestation and your intuition. And a number of people have done the intuition classes with me. So we won't be going into a huge amount of detail, but I have a lot of resources and a lot of tools, so you have plenty of opportunity to practice using your intuition. And then on, so this week, the week of mastering your shadow and golden shadow is is the most difficult week of the course. And I say this openly, so nobody is surprised when we get to it. But it is an essential part of personal power. If we left out the shadow work, it would be an incomplete course. So although nobody likes looking at their shadow, that's why it's called the shadow. It's in the darkness. We've hidden it away. It is an essential part of personal power. So we do shadow work, and we're also going to do golden shadow. So let me explain a little bit about them. So shadow, when we tend to talk about shadow work, what we're saying is there are parts of ourselves that we've judged. So it comes back down to judgment, right? So we've already talked about judgment. It comes back to the fact that we have judged parts of ourselves, and we've said we don't really like that about ourselves. And we've done it subconsciously. We haven't done it consciously. We've done it subconsciously. So I don't like that about me. I'm going to pretend that that's not me because I've judged it and I don't like it. I'm going to push it outside of me, pretend that's not me, and I'm going to project it onto somebody else and say, I'm not that, but that person over there is. Now, that's why we like to point the finger. That's why we like to blame other people. It's really to do with our shadow. And so this shadow has a great impact on our relationships and our lives. And it's also the bit that triggers us. So for example, say you might look at somebody and think, they're really lazy. And you feel fine saying that about somebody else. But if someone said it to you, that might be a really trigger because it's your shadow. So you point the finger at someone else and say, well, I'm not that. But if somebody was to say it to you, that would really trigger you. So this is a point of where we get triggered and where we get upset with people, where we get annoyed, where we fall out with friends and family, is these trigger points about the things that are in our shadow that we can't accept about ourselves. So we tend to talk about ourselves often in spirituality, we talk about wholeness. Well, you can't be whole if you don't accept all parts of you, right? So this is why this work is really, really important. And the reason why I say most people don't like to do it is because it's uncomfortable to face this. But I've adapted a process that actually came from Ken Wilber. And he did it as a 3-step process. And my overriding feeling was, that's a long way round, which is very much what I do to most people's processes. That seems like a long way round. It would just be easier to rip the band-aid off in one quick go rather than having 3 steps, because the 3 steps, it felt to me, was a bit long and a bit more drawn out. So I adapted the process that he did and I've made it into a 1-step process. And I have done this with clients on one-to-one sessions, and we all acknowledge it's uncomfortable for a very short amount of time, but then when you go through that discomfort and on the other end, the amount of freedom that you then have from having gone through that and brought that level of acceptance back in, so there isn't really that shadow there anymore, that sense of freedom is unmatched. I've done it myself. I can tell you from personal experience, it really is a deeply rewarding process. So for a bit of discomfort, and your mind will want to argue with you and say, no, I don't like this. It will do that. It will fight you to begin with. But once you go through it, you will see how amazing you feel. And it is one of the key parts of personal power, because it means that anyone can say anything to you and you just don't care. It's irrelevant. They can say anything. They can tell lies about you. They can say anything about you. They can call you names. And you're like, yeah, okay, fair enough. As I said right at the beginning with the Dalai Lama, when asked about the Chinese protesters, he just giggled. He laughed. He couldn't care less what they thought. So mastering your shadow is really important. And a lot of people who do shadow work just leave it there. And I feel that's a really unbalanced way of doing things. So I always include the golden shadow. And not a lot of people talk about the golden shadow, and not a lot of people work on the golden shadow. And it's very simply, we have all these negative things that we don't like about ourselves, or we call ourselves, or we don't like if other people call us. And so it's what we would say is negative things about us. And if we resolve those, that's great. But then what about all the really good stuff about us that we can't quite acknowledge? You know, especially in Britain, we're very modest because we're scared of our egos sort of going a bit nuts with like compliments. But actually your golden shadow is, you know, you've come here with some gifts. Everyone's quite amazing. We're all unique in who we are. And there is something to be celebrated in that, and there is potentiality to be sort of stepped into. And so people find it equally as hard sometimes to acknowledge the good stuff about themselves than they do the negative. You know, if someone gives you a compliment and you brush it away and say, oh no, not me, you know, that's the golden shadow. Someone's giving you a really amazing compliment and you're not able to receive that. So bringing that ability also into yourself, that's part of your personal power, is just to acknowledge who you are in this world, what your purpose is, and to be able to walk that path without any kind of embarrassment or making yourself small. So that's a really important part of personal power too. So we'll be doing both of those. And then finally, in the 7th week, seventh step is really about sort of putting it all together, integrating it. But it's also about sort of using the idea of power dynamics as a structure for viewing the world. Because once you start to see the power dynamics at play, it really does start to change how you view people what they're trying to do, and you can kind of see through the manipulation much easier. You know, and I started off saying, well, why am I doing an 8-week course now? People can't see the manipulation. That's one of the things I've really noticed. They can't see the manipulation. And it's not a stupidity. It's not because they're dumb. It's because we've never been given this framework for looking at people's motivations. And we've never seen it in this power dynamic before. And we have these certain assumptions about why someone is saying something. And we have all these belief systems that we've accumulated. But actually, when you start to see things within power dynamics, you begin to understand and can then discern whether you want to carry on listening to somebody, or what are they trying to get from you. And then you can decide if something you're willing to give. And so this is a really important part of the course, because it's really important in relationships, romantic relationships, family relationships, work relationships. I get a lot of questions about people's work relationships and how to resolve them. And so understanding it from a power perspective really changes everything. And when you're living from love, peace and joy, there's a lot more compassion for understanding why people behave the way they behave, or what are they trying to achieve, what are they trying to get, what's their motivation. So once we understand power, once we've practiced all these steps, then we can step off this emotional roller coaster of life. And doesn't that sound nice, right? So stepping off that emotional roller coaster and into the more peaceful flow of life. So what can we do about these steps? Well, I've identified 7 steps for you. If you want to do those by yourself, obviously you can do. If you would like some help with that, I'm running this 8-week course starting on the 21st of June. So it's going to be running every Monday for an hour, 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock UK time. So the conversion for that is, and I've written it down, so if you see me looking, is Europe is obviously 1 hour ahead, so 7 p.m. Pacific time is 10 a.m. Central time is noon. And Eastern time is 1 p.m. So it's going to be running every Monday for 1 hour. We're going to go through all the steps. There will be a replay available for everybody on the course. There will be a workbook. There will be resources to help you practice, and that you can keep and that you can use over and over again. It was requested on the first Zoom call that we start a group chat to go along with the course. And even though we're on Instagram and nobody wanted to be on social media platforms, so the general agreement was that we would start a Signal group. So for those who haven't come across Signal, it's like WhatsApp, but it's got better encryption, and those people who don't want anyone to know what they're talking about go on Signal. So we said we would start a Signal group so that we can have accountability for those who want it, to have a place and a forum for people to talk through what they're experiencing as well. So there will be a Signal group that we have that runs alongside the course as well. And the 8th week, so we've got 7 steps, and then the 8th week, like I said, is about kind of celebrating how far we've come, troubleshooting anything that people have struggled with, and any nuances there may be. So, for example, people often struggle with the idea of surrender. I haven't put it as a separate step because it's more of a nuance within the steps. Some people struggle with boundaries. Again, it could have been a separate step, but we'd be doing this class forever if I just put everything into individual steps. But it may be that it comes up that people need help with boundaries. So that's what that 8th week is for, just to include that for everybody so that they've got some space to work with the nuances. So in terms of pricing, we did have a super duper special price which is now run out. So the early bird price is still available for anyone who wants to join. It is available from the 24th of May, so it's already started up until the 6th of June, and it's 30% off the standard price, so it's $224.99. That's still pretty good with a 30% off for early bird. The standard price, which will start from the 7th of June, running through to the start of the course, 21st of June, is the standard price, and that's $319.99. However, that's still 68% cheaper than if you did one-to-one classes with me. So this is, I teach everything that you'll be learning in the course. I actually do teach one-to-one, and I have been teaching one-to-one to clients whenever they've asked on these particular subjects to get some extra learning. So you're getting the same level of information as just in a small group format. So it's still 68% cheaper than that. And so if you want to join, obviously, I would love to have you join me and grow your personal power. If you've missed today's live, for anyone watching this on the IGTV, I'll be doing another one of these in a couple of weeks, I think, and there's also a Zoom call, but you can go to my website, sharonlawson.co.uk, and there's all the information. If you go to online classes, there's information about the course, and if you go to free resources, free events, you will see the schedule for the dates for the remaining live calls. So everything is kind of on the website if you need it to be. Everything's there. And so we'll leave it there for now. And I hope you found the talk on power interesting and helpful. And even if you don't decide you want to join me on the course, then I hope that you understand the values of developing your personal power, and it's something that you find useful in your life. So thanks, everybody. Thanks.